All right, hey everyone. Today we're going to talk about mark making, specifically about drawing, and maybe drawing for the first time in a long time for you. But what I want to do is just get you making some marks on paper. And that doesn't mean you have to be able to draw the outline of something. It just means we need to understand what drawing is really about in essence, at its very foundation. And what a drawing is, and maybe it's helpful to compare a drawing to, say, a photograph. A photograph you can take at a 30th of a second, a 250th of a second, and boom, it's an instant, and it's that moment. But with drawing, of course, a drawing accumulates in time. You put marks down, and you put more marks down, and it's a continuous investigation of what it is you're seeing in mark making. And so it develops over time. In fact, I would say drawing encompasses time. But more than, I mean, there's a very interesting project done way back in 1997 by an artist named Francis Alice, and I'm sure you can find it, the video of this, but he pushed a block of ice around Mexico City for 9 hours, and he started with this big block of ice, and then he pushes it around, and it slowly starts melting, and of course he leaves a little bit of a trail of water, and eventually it gets further and further reduced until it's just a tiny, smaller than an ice cube, and then it disappears. And sometimes I've shown that to my students, and I've asked them, of course they look at me kind of strange why we were watching ice melt for like 5 minutes on the video, and I asked them to make a connection. What is there that's happening in that video that could also be true of drawing? What's the connection? And of course the answer is that there was this trace, this movement of this ice through all these streets in Mexico City, that these marks were being left in the street, although they were very sort of, vaporous and almost not there at all, and they melted really, evaporated very quickly, that they were recording Francis Alice, the artist's movement. And that's what we see when we look at Van Gogh, when we look at Rembrandt, when we look at any artist's marks in a drawing, we see that they're very marks. And the drawing is an accumulation of those marks. So drawing is a record of movement accumulated in time. So what I want to do right now is go through an exercise where you're just going to talk about, through your line, a sense of movement, a sense of feeling. And Picasso was so great at this because he had this wonderful quote that said, if you want to learn to draw, you need to close your eyes and sing. So I want you to, if you take me up on this, I want you to begin engage in this with me with your eyes closed. So you get out a pencil, Sharpie, whatever you got, piece of paper, and I'm going to start to, I'll suggest a little prompt that will get you to, what I want you to do is just describe the motion or the movement or the feeling. Okay? So if I said basketball, this isn't a cookie cutter outline drawing of a basketball I want you to go after, but maybe I'll say bouncing a basketball. I want you to think about what that movement is, what that gesture is, because ultimately every drawing has to have its own energy. It has to have its own life to it. Otherwise, I think it fails. Okay? So we're going to begin with that, just a record of movement in time, mark making on paper. So grab your paper and let us begin. So if you're just getting going here, if you're going to draw something, and I've got my little Apple pencil here, how do you hold the pencil? How do you hold the pen? Well, oftentimes we just kind of grab it out of like this tradition, this custom that we have of signing our name like to a check or to your credit card thing. And what that facilitates is a very small movement of the fingers to get all the letters of your name put in. But if you're drawing on a piece of paper that's of any size at all, this isn't going to get you very far. So you might think about, I like to hold my pencil, my charcoal, often like this, so that when I'm making a stroke, I'm able to use my whole arm and not just my fingers. So that's a tip you could try out. Maybe it won't be very familiar or comfortable at first, but it sure gives you a lot of range of motion, movement, angle. You know, when we go into this exercise, you want to think about pressure, you want to think about velocity, you want to think about the angle that you're holding the tool. But also when I'm holding the pencil, I like to have my fingers, holding it this way, I can have my fingers on the paper too. So it's this tactile experience where I can draw and feel the paper. So even if your eyes are closed, you can still feel what you're doing. You're not floating above the paper, you know, like this or like this, but you're actually touching the paper. Sometimes when I'm drawing, I get so into it that I actually burn a little bit of the tips of my nails off because I've developed so much friction because I'm just so much energy in the mark making, and my fingernails get hot. Okay, so think about maybe trying to feel this drawing not only as a sense of kind of emotional kind of thing, but feel the actual tactile experience of putting a mark across the paper. So there's going to be texture to it. Of course, on an iPad, it's like drawing on glass or something. On the paper, you'll have that texture of the paper, the feeling of the tool itself in your hand. It's another way of kind of knowing. You kind of know things. People talk about like kinesthetic knowledge. It's a way of knowing by doing. So when we go through this exercise, please kind of really pay attention to how things feel in a tactile sense. Come to know your pencil and your paper in a different way with your eyes closed. Don't judge yourself too quickly. That's really important. This is just a process. This is just an exploration today. This is becoming familiar with the material and the tools and your self-drawing. So don't judge yourself too quickly. Save that for some other time. So up and down and around, and I hope you're thinking about moving and your line making more now. Thanks for watching. Bye.